Self-improvement is lying to you. Work out, meditate, eat healthy, don't drink, do this, do that. You write out plans and schedules, and what's the result? Absolutely nothing. Stop lying to yourself for a second. Pause the video. Observe your body. Is that feeling of discomfort there? That feeling is the truth. Because then there's all this willpower bullshit. A chaotic world screaming, change, change. But where are you in all this? Who are you? You don't know. But 160 years ago, there was a man who figured out exactly why we choose that very discomfort with our own hands. To the story of the man who realized that sabotaging our own lives is actually the freedom we have to the underground. Welcome to the video, my friend. That man was Fyodor Dostoevsky. And before we go any further, I want you to understand something about him. He was not a professor writing theory in a comfortable study. He was a man who had been led to a mock execution, made to kneel in the snow, waiting for a bullet that never came, then shipped to a Siberian labor camp for years. He came back from all of that with a kind of knowledge about human psychology that no comfortable life could have produced. He was a hacker, not of computers, but of the human operating system itself. He found the deepest, most hidden glitch in how we work. And in 1864, he wrote it down in a book called Notes from Underground. A book so accurate about your secret inner life that reading it feels like someone broke into your phone and read everything you have never said out loud. So, how did he manage to hack into your mind from 160 years ago? Because he caught that terrifying detail we all missed. The narrator is a 40-year-old former civil servant. He lives alone in a basement in St. Petersburg. He introduces himself without embarrassment. He is sick, spiteful, and unattractive. And he is the most self-aware person in the history of fiction. Not self-aware in the healthy way people talk about in therapy, self-aware in the way that makes it impossible to act. To do anything, to be anything. He analyzes every impulse before he can act on it. He examines every emotion before he can feel it. He questions the motive until the motive dissolves under examination, and he is left standing still, paralyzed, having done nothing again. Under normal circumstances, you'd expect someone this smart and self-aware to conquer the world, right? But the reality is the exact opposite. When you hear why, you'll understand how intelligence can actually be a curse. Here is the question this opens and does not immediately answer. If self-awareness and intelligence are supposed to make us better, why does the underground man's extreme self-awareness make him worse? Why is he less functional, less happy, less capable of living than the oblivious people around him who never question anything? The direct man, he says, acts immediately. Something makes him angry, he punches a wall. Something makes him happy, he laughs. He does not stop to interrogate whether the anger is justified or how long the happiness will last. He just acts. And then it is done. He moves on. And he sleeps like a baby. The underground man cannot do this. He feels something, then immediately turns his consciousness on the feeling like a spotlight, and the feeling dissolves under the light. Then he examines why it dissolved. Then he becomes ashamed of the examining. Then he examines the shame. By the end of the cycle, the original feeling is completely gone, and he is sitting in the same place he started, having consumed enormous energy and produced nothing but more paralysis. And here is the part the book forces you to sit with and admit. He is attached to it. This is not just suffering happening to him. He has organized his entire identity around the consciousness, around the spitefulness, around the analysis that never ends. Take it away, and there is no underground man left, just an ordinary person. And ordinary feels like death. How could someone refuse to let go of their own paralysis, their own pain? Well, this is where Dostoevsky forces us to face our most disgusting secret. Think about it. How much of your own suffering is actually something you need? How much of the anxiety, the overthinking, the running internal commentary that never shuts up, how much of it is not happening to you, but is being deliberately chosen by some part of you that says, this is what I am, and being this is better than being nothing? But the book goes somewhere even more disturbing than the paralysis. There is a passage about a toothache, not about the pain, about the pleasure, about the way a man with a toothache will moan in increasingly elaborate and theatrical ways, not simply from the pain, but from a weird, almost private satisfaction in the production of suffering. Because the moaning is real, the feeling is real, and real, even when real is painful, is better than the flat, grey nothing of ordinary days when nothing penetrates and everything feels like the volume is turned down. Do you think this is just the delusion of a grumpy old man from the 19th century? Let's hold a magnifying glass to your own life, to your most private moments. You know this from the inside. You have held a grudge past the point where it served any function because letting it go would mean feeling nothing instead, and nothing, it turned out, was worse than the sting. You have replayed a specific humiliation in your head at night, not to process it, not to learn from it, but because the replay keeps the wound warm, and the wound is at least something. You have sat in a bad mood and turned away the thing that might have improved it, because the bad mood was real, and yours and familiar, in a way the improvement wasn't. You chose the scroll right before bed, knowing the alarm is set for 6, choosing the exhaustion like it was the thing today that actually belonged to you. The underground man calls this the pleasure of the toothache. And what he is really saying is that suffering is not always the exact opposite of what we want. Sometimes it is exactly what we want, because it makes us feel alive in a way that nothing else currently available to us can. But why? Why do we get this weird, sick pleasure from deliberately hurting ourselves? The answer is hidden inside the biggest lie humanity has ever told itself. This connects to the biggest idea in the book, the Crystal Palace. It was a real structure in London in the 1850s, enormous and gleaming, a monument to rational progress, to the idea that civilization had worked out the formula for human flourishing and now just needed everyone to follow it. For the underground man, it becomes a symbol of a specific kind of violence, the violence of being told that you are a rational creature who, once shown the optimal path, should simply take it. Today, that violence has changed shape. We might not have glass palaces anymore, but we have flawless formulas dictating exactly how we should live. We know this formula in its modern version. Good grades, respectable career, regular exercise, therapy, 8 hours of sleep, meaningful relationships, gratitude practice, measurable goals, follow the steps, achieve the life. Dostoevsky says, watch what we do with that formula. Watch how reliably, how inevitably, we will find a way to smash it. Not from stupidity, not from weakness, from something that looks a lot like the freedom left. Because if we simply followed the formula, if we just executed the optimal program when given the correct inputs, we would be piano keys. We would be a mechanism producing predictable outputs. And something in us, something very deep and very stubborn, refuses to be a piano key. The self-sabotage, the irrational choice, the deliberate destruction of something that was working, all of it is the psyche insisting that there is something in here that the formula does not own, that we are free, even if the ability to make a bad choice is the proof of freedom we have. Are we just piano keys? And if we aren't, what exactly are we paying to prove it? If you're tired of performing the rational, optimized, together version of yourself, and you want somewhere to actually drop that for a minute, consider subscribing. Let's look at the ugly truths together. We understand sabotaging our own lives when we're alone, but how does this sickness turn into a nightmare when other people are involved? That's where the real destruction begins. The dinner party is where the book stops being philosophy and turns into forensics. The underground man has former schoolmates he despises. He has analyzed them with the full, contemptuous precision of someone who cannot help seeing through things. And what he has found is shallowness, obliviousness, the specific self-satisfaction of people who have never been disturbed by their own psychology. He does not like them, he does not respect them, they do not particularly want him there. And when he learns they are having a dinner together, he invites himself, goes there, drinks too much, oscillates between contempt and desperate neediness in the same sentence, insults someone, and immediately tries to recover. Watching himself do it from outside his own body, aware of every mistake as it happens, unable to stop any of it. The evening completely collapses under the weight of his own behavior. Is this man who deliberately humiliates himself around people he hates, just insane? Or is he just doing a little too loudly what all of us do every single day? And the question is, why did he go? Because despising someone does not protect you from needing their approval. The contempt and the need live in the exact same place, and sometimes the need is louder, so you go. You go into the room with the people you internally deemed worthless, and you perform for them. You want something from them that you can't quite name, but you know exactly what it feels like when it isn't given. And it isn't given. And afterward, driving home, you sit in the specific, heavy silence of someone who just paid a price they knew in advance they were going to pay. Think about the last carefully constructed post you put together for an audience you don't even really like. The specific way you worded something to land a certain way among people whose opinions you have already catalogued and found lacking. The laugh, that was slightly too eager. The name you dropped on purpose. We are all at the dinner party. The underground man just has the honesty to write it down afterward without making excuses. Let's skip the social masks and the fake crowds. What if a pure, expectation-free, genuine love arrived at your door? Could you accept it? Don't be so sure. And then there is Liza. And this is the scene that lands the hardest. Not because it is the darkest, but because it touches on the exact thing most people never admit about themselves. After the dinner party collapses, the underground man ends up in a long, unexpected conversation with a young woman named Liza, a woman in difficult circumstances. And something happens that he neither planned nor controlled. He reaches her. He says genuinely true things about loneliness and being trapped in a life that is slowly erasing you. She receives them with complete openness, and something real passes between them in that room. It is the most human he has been in the entire book. She comes to find him later, at his apartment, with the specific, fragile courage of someone who has decided to trust. Salvation has finally arrived, right? The underground man will climb out of his dark hole thanks to this love. No, actually, the exact opposite. What he does next will make your blood run cold. He destroys it, not in a moment of passion or confusion. Methodically, first he is cold, then cutting, then he delivers a speech designed to humiliate her and re-establish his position as someone who cannot be reached, who cannot be affected, who is not the person he appeared to be in that conversation. He kicks her out. She leaves. And he knows immediately, sitting in the silence he just created, exactly what he has done. Not just that it was wrong, but that he chose it. That something in him saw what she was offering and systematically tore it apart. Because what she was offering required him to believe he deserved it. And this is the underground's deepest function. The pain isn't just pain, it is a story. A story about what the underground man is damaged, spiteful, and too complicated for ordinary human warmth. A story he has been building and maintaining for so long that it has become his stable possession. Liza's compassion is a structural threat to that story. If she can see him clearly and still offer something real, then maybe the story is wrong. And losing the story, losing the underground, feels more dangerous than staying in it. Because the underground is known, the pain is familiar. In the dark, he knows exactly where everything is. The light requires him to see himself without his story. And without the story, he doesn't know what he is. Think about it. This is exactly why we suddenly go cold when someone gets close enough to care. Why we push away the person who actually wants to help just to protect our own miserable story. So what's the solution? How do we get out of this underground? Actually, the answer is hidden in giving up trying to get out. But the surface people are underground too. They are running their own versions of the same cycles, performing their own versions of the same rationality, choosing their own versions of the toothache, going to their own dinner parties. Nobody is completely above ground. The normal world is just a performance. And the underground man, for all his misery, is the person in the book honest enough to say so. Dostoevsky was not writing a warning about what to avoid. He was holding up a mirror to the part of you that you don't display in public. And the relief this book offers, the strange, unexpected relief of it, is not a solution. It is recognition. It's an understanding. 160 years ago, Someone sat down and described your 2 a.m. scrolling, your sudden coldness, your dinner party performance, and your Liza. And he did not conclude that you were beyond saving, just human, in the full, irrational, self-sabotaging, contradictory sense of the word. You do not have to fix the underground today. You do not have to be rational or positive, or have the mechanism completely figured out just to earn the right to exist without shame. You are allowed to be exactly where you are, simply seeing it clearly, without the performance of having already solved it. Seeing it is the thing. Seeing it without flinching. That is the honest beginning. There is